Rick, thanks for joining us on both sides of the fence. This is a bit of a different podcast for us live in front of the Manor Real Estate offices. Mate, let's start right back from the beginning. Flipping burgers, KFC.
Yeah, actually, it was worse than that. It was actually picking out the piece of the chicken's anatomy that no one wants to eat called the arsehole. So I wish it was flipping burgers. But no, I guess have come from a family that my parents back home from Portugal were peasants. We're peasant blood. Thank God we're not in India. Otherwise, we would definitely be in a very low class. But they immigrated to Australia, gave us some opportunities. Mum and Dad were just workaholics, and they've, I guess, passed that on to my sister and I, which is really interesting because we are in a career that we can make a stupid amount of money. And there's a lot of educated people in this room today. I'm not one of those. And I don't know what I could do today to go out there to make the sort of money that we want to make, depending on your balance and your situation, without having a full-on education, so to speak. So, yeah, started with chickens and then worked in restaurants and drove cabs and did an apprenticeship in mechanics and, had coal saw thrown all over me and all that sort of stuff. And they're good things. They're good things because you're dealing with people. So I think what I found throughout my career is I always tend to gravitate with people that have had some life experiences, who know how to be a little bit streetwise, and some of you may relate to that.
Mm. Coming from Portugal to Australia, what was that transition like for the family, and what character did that build along the way?
Yeah, I don't remember much of it. I was only 7, so I remember my dad came out 2 years prior to. The way it was done back then was you got somebody to go out to a country and then they'd bring in everybody else, 2 years later type thing. So Dad came out and sent for Mum 2 years later and how they did things. So I was 7 when I arrived, started a new school, and I by what I remember, it was all very exciting, but a little bit daunting at the end of the day. Of back then, being of ethnic minority, there was a lot of things that used to occur. It was actually really interesting when I started working in these suburbs, and people were talking about. They'd make comments about, you're working with the Jews and the Jewish clients and the gays, and I'm going, right, yeah, okay. So what's a gay person? I didn't realise one of my best friends was gay at the time, and I'd always see him kissing his other friend. But that's what we did as wogs, right? You kiss your mum and dad and blah, blah, blah. So I was very naive to a lot of things. And I think that was a good upbringing where being brought up in the suburbs, you're living and working with a diversity of personalities, so to speak. Yeah, it wasn't just one stereotype. I think that's all gone now. I think we're all assimilated. But I don't actually remember a lot of it.
Yeah. I want to understand what happens in your mind that shifts you from, obviously being at a level where you're just at KFC, well, not just at KFC, but you're at KFC, and then you shift to being the number 1 agent in the country.
Okay, and we've got 12 minutes, right? Okay, good. All right. So I was working. I got married very young. I'm on my 3rd marriage. So if there's anyone that can give me a run for my money, put your hand up now. So I'm a slow learner in many cases, but it's like going for a listing. You try, you don't get it, you get it, and then finally it works out, so to speak. So do not ask me for marital advice. I guess how I see it is I was in a situation where I needed to make money, bless you. I needed to make money and put food on the table. I'd come from an environment where if you earned, back then I was earning as an apprenticeship mechanic $72 a week, and you could have bought a property for $75,000 and been on 17.5%. I think that was my first mortgage, as I recall. So my environment was very much a case of being a labourer, working on an hourly rate. My father, I always remember, and I remember having to do this at one of the Ingham's factories where I had to beg to do some overtime. And so I had to beg a supervisor to allow me to work on the weekends so I can earn time and a half to feed my wife at the time. And I always thought to myself, I don't ever want to be in that situation. Yeah, so it is. So when I hear people going, "Shit, I work," excuse me, oh, you're going to edit some of this stuff, right? Okay, all right. So when I hear people going, "Oh, you know, we worked hard and we worked so hard and this, that, and the other." I mean, my best friend's a surf instructor and he works $25. He earns $25 an hour at the moment. And you think being a surf instructor is glamorous. You're at the beach. The eye candy's amazing. You're catching all these waves. You're not. You're stuck in a wetsuit for 6, 7, 8 hours a day in cold water, pushing people onto waves. And you earn $25 an hour. We can all go out there and pick up a listing today, tomorrow, or 2 or 3, depending on where you are in your career, and earn thousands of dollars. So having worked manually and physically for a small amount, I think I made a mental decision that I wanted to succeed and be my own boss. It was a little bit like when my dad said to me, I remember buying a car, HK Holden, and I was 14. Hang on, I changed my license 3 years. Yes, I was 14. And I bought this car from the Trading Post. We used to have this magazine called the Trading Post for $450. Parked it out the front of our house. I'd never learned how to drive, but I'd seen it on TV. So I thought I can drive a manual car. Learned the hard way that I couldn't. I was so scared the first time I drove it that I left it outside my house or my mum's home for 2 weeks. My dad was about to call the police and say someone's dumped a car. I've said, no, don't do that. It's my car. You can't drive your car. Why? I haven't got a license. Okay, I can fix that. Got on a bus, went to Beverly Hills, got dressed up, bought a cigar, bodged my birth certificate. I got my license, done. I could drive my car. I remember when I was working at Kentucky Fried Chicken, I wanted to become a manager. I was a cook at the time. And they go, no, you can't apply for a manager because you've got to be married. They want married men. Gone, cool, okay, we can fix that. Went out to the Kazi Club. I met someone. Probably a little bit awkward for my first wife when I said to her when I first met her that I'm going to marry her. But that's how I was driven, rightfully or wrongfully. That's how I was driven. It was like, I want to do this. What am I going to do it rather than being emotional about it? I've had a lot of good luck, I must say, along the way. Going from the west to the east, it has been a different culture when I started there. But I think by being someone who's, I keep it really simple. People want to deal with good people. People want to deal with nice people. That's how I read it. So I think if you can come across as being someone who is there genuinely to help, and if you can't come across as being someone who's genuinely there to help, then go do some acting lessons, learn body language and pretend. Learn to pretend well. You've got to be, I've said this a couple of times to a few people, I think it's really important to be a bit of a chameleon, meaning not in a deceitful way, but where you can connect with your clients as quickly as possible. So if you've got something that you're concerned about, deal with it. If it's your speech, if it's your language, if it's not understanding product, get some help at the end of the day. I know I've got off the topic there a little bit, but so I guess to answer your question, when you work on a dollar rate, I don't think there's a big future with being a salary person. So I wanted to become a business person. Yeah.
Cool. How long have you been number one in Raine and Horne?
I've been fortunate enough to have had some number one opportunities for about 15 years now.
Yeah.
We are very, very lucky in some ways that a lot of our properties are higher per dollar, so we can earn some big commissions. We're exchanging 1, 2, 3 today. We're exchanging one for $612,000, and we're making $12,000 out of it. And then we're exchanging another one for $10.8 million, and we'll make $160,000 out of it. So wow. I think you've got to be able to work in all those markets. You know, I get a lot of people coming into the industry where they go, I just want to sell the top end. And the interesting thing was when I started 32 years ago, I wasn't allowed to sell the top end. It was like, you get the properties with potential rather than the good glorified stuff, the good stuff. Now you can be a 20, 21, 22-year-old, well-presented, well-mannered, likable, be reasonably good on tech, and you can sell the big stuff. Yeah. The world has changed, and I find that very exciting, where people say to me, what keeps you going? A lot of my staff keep me going. Their drive and their enthusiasm keeps me going.
Yeah. So 32 years in the industry, 15 years at the top, that's an insane level of consistency. How do you do that?
Yes, you get divorced twice. You remarry for the third time. No, look, just joking. In some ways, I guess you can have tunnel vision too much sometimes. And I'm learning that as I'm at an age where my body clock is on the second half of our life, of our ride. So I was very tunnel vision. I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this. And it wasn't about being number one. It was, to be really upfront with you, it was about making a shit ton of money as quickly as possible. That's the honest truth. Whereas now in my career, the money is important, but growing my team's important, growing my people, trying to spend some time with my new family. I've got a 3.5-year-old. So I've got a 31, a 29 and a 3.5-year-old. So talk about not learning by your mistakes. Just joking, we love him dearly. So I think that put yourself in an opportunity. You've got to find out what you want to achieve. I hate it when people say, what's your why? But you've got to find something that drives you at the end of the day. I used to have a bit of a mantra that I didn't want to be in a position where someone was going to pat me on the back. I wanted to be in a position where I was a lot more independent, and if I achieved a goal, whether it was a listing or a sale or something positive, I would reward myself. And that worked for me for a long time. Yep. But I would reward myself. Back then, I used to love my red wine and my bourbon. Unfortunately, every time I'd make a sale, I'd enjoy my red wine and bourbon. And fortunately or unfortunately, we're making a shitload of sales. So that wasn't a great result at the end of the day. So I no longer drink, and I found other purposes. But you've got to work out what drives you at the end of the day. There are people in your business and in your industry that will help you, but you've got to be the one in front of the game as to why do you want to do this? Why do you want to go out at 7 o'clock in the morning and take a client for a walk and talk to them? Why do you want to give up your Saturdays and your Sundays? I mean, when I started, it's 7 days a week. Yeah. You know, it's not 4.5 days a week. I'm now working part-time. My first appointment's about 8:30. I do kitty pickup at 4:30, drop him off to my wife, and then resume again between 6 and 7:30. So I don't do the 7 days, I do 6 days. So I kind of figure I'm working part-time now, but you need that. And you need that now in this market where you can't go, oh, the market's shit. You are editing this, right? Yeah. Okay. All right. The market's not great. I'm just going to have a holiday, or I'm going to switch off because things are going to get better. Can I tell you, this is, for some of you that have been in the industry just for a year or 2 or 3, this is probably a gift. This is probably the best opportunity you're going to get in your career to find listings. You know, people talk about expired listings. 6 months ago, 12 months ago, you can't get an expired listing. Everything was selling. So unless you had a profile, you weren't going to get the foot in the door to those things. Nowadays on markets generally, I don't know in your areas, but generally things are taking longer to sell. There are a lot of listing opportunities, and often if you're the second agent, the second cab off the rank, the first agent's already done a lot of the hard work for you in the educating process. Got to pull me up when I start deviating from questions.
That's okay.
I've got a question for you. With all the time and experience you've had, what would you say is now your recipe for success as an agent?
If I was to start today, or just what I do?
Both sides.
Okay. All right. So what do I do now is my recipe. My recipe is from the beginning and now, you've got to be a lister. The selling process you can learn. There's tools, there's processes. You've got to be able to list. So I've always had the attitude of I'll list whatever I possibly can. Years ago, we used to have private sales. That hasn't really kicked in our area in the last few years. But I would go out to someone who was advertising their private sale, and I'd say, look, can I help you write your ad? You know, can I bring some people through? You do it in an indirect way. So I think I'm always, more times than not, it's what can I give to get back? So I have a bit more of an attitude of my commission may be more superannuation, and meaning that the commission may not be ready now. It may be something that I'm working on for 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, 5 years, rather than am I just prospecting to find the red hot diamonds right now? So I think you've got to have a business model where you're going for the hot ones because you got to list this stuff and you got to pay your bills and you've got to get on, and then you've got to find those clients that you're going to give a bit of love to and support and help for nothing. So put in to get back later. So what I did before and what I'm doing now, listings always been a big part. I'll take on overpriced listings. To me, it's all about motivation. When I'm trying to list something, and a lot of the time people aren't going to tell you their motivation. How I run my business at the moment is...
how do you get around that when people don't tell you their motivation?
Yeah. We went to a property yesterday in Vaucluse with one of my colleagues. The gentleman's 95 and he's never going to move. His daughters are there saying that we're just doing a price check. Great. He's 95, price check. He might have a day. He might have another 5 years. By the end of it, we were up to the stage of we're sending them a proposal. We've educated them on what the market may do next year, and it may be in their best interest to create some urgency and put it on sooner rather than later with a longer settlement period. I tend to be, when I do my appraisals, a lot of people say to me, geez, you go in and you fluff around a lot. I try and connect with people. Whether it's you're going into a house and you're seeing some particular artwork. The house I went into yesterday, they had 2 pictures of horses. So I asked them about the pictures. Do they ride horses? Do they breed horses? I like horses, so I thought if I can get one of them to be involved in horses, I'm there. I did another appraisal on a unit with potential in Birriga Road. Young lady who's getting married, who's having a baby in 4 months' time. Started talking about kids. Where do you live? Oh, Kyle Bay. Oh, Kyle Bay. My sister lived at Kyle Bay. Connect. You've got to get them to like you. You've got to get them to trust you at the end of the day. So my business model is I have someone who does buyer work and someone who does my admin work. And then all my listings I bring in on an associate, meaning I conjunct with pretty much all my team. They do a lot of the heavy lifting and we share a lot of the workload.
Some questions from the guys, the sales guys. We've got Harry asking, what was your motivation when you were at KFC and what's your motivation now?
Yeah, my motivation when I was at KFC was make money. I wanted to, I got married when I was 19 because being of an ethnic background, my dad was very, very strict. So the only way to get out of there was to get married. And to get my promotion, I had to get married. So I thought, 2 things pointing me in that direction. Let's make that happen. So the focus was make money, set myself up, buy some property. And I remember when I went into the eastern suburbs and I went to a house in Gilliville Avenue as a private sale. And I've gone in and the gentleman's ripping out this granite kitchen. I don't know what it was worth, but I actually said to him, are you serious? Can I have your kitchen? I just couldn't believe there was so much wealth being thrown out, so to speak. It wasn't my world. I've always been driven by a dollar. Now I'm driven more about what keeps me going in real estate is about the people that I want to work with. So this may or may not sound corny and some of you may or may not connect to it, but I get a real buzz out of sitting in the gentleman's lounge yesterday with his 2 daughters. He's 95, he's travelled the world. We talked about sailing. I'm an uneducated person. I get an education out of that stuff. I learn a lot from it. A few days back, I was talking to another gentleman who's in finance. He's talking to me about bonds, which I still don't understand, but it was enlightening. So I like people. I think it's important to be a people person. If you don't like people and don't like talking to people, then I think we've got to reevaluate one's position.
Yep. Cool.
How do you stay motivated now? I know that you've got a team and that drives you, but what do you do when you're going up against Alex Phillips, Michael Pallier, and you've just missed out on 6 listings?
Yeah, I think my record's 9 actually, 9 in a row that I've lost, and they were up against Alex, which was fine, but where I hate missing out is when I miss out to actually some of you guys, a younger generation that's coming through, and I'm going to go, what the effing hell? I've been doing this, I've just sold the last 20 in the area. This little shit kicker's just come in and he's just pinched it from me. Why has he pinched it from me? Because He's likable. He or she is likable. They've serviced the client to a lot more than what I have. I've probably taken it for granted that they were old clients and they'd come back to me, and I've dropped the ball. And that happens a lot. That's why I think today it's so exciting that if you're part of a brand that's got some market share, you don't have to have 10 years or 5 years experience at the end of the day. So I have lost a lot of listings in the past. There was a time where a few years ago I had a bit of anxiety, or a lot of anxiety actually, a bit of depression. All of a sudden I'm going to be a dad. Oh my God, I'm going through this again. I've just had my freedom. No, I don't. I had a lot of therapy. It's all good now. Thanks for asking. And it's the best thing we've ever done. But there was a time where I've gone, maybe it's time. Maybe the new generation's coming through. They're so tech savvy. They're so sharp. They're faster than what I am. I don't want to be part of the 5 a.m. club. It's time. I'll just run a property management business, a rent roll, and I'll make a few deals here and there. And then I think I lost something on a Friday too, actually, Alex. And he outsmarted me on this particular transaction. He was good enough to come in onto this particular listing that there was no way I was ever going to lose. And he actually presented an offer on an email. And so the client's gone, oh, you've already got an offer on an email, $14 million. That swung it his way. Funny how that offer never eventuated. That buyer fell over. But the point was, I got outsmarted. I got outplayed. But 2 days later, I picked up another listing. The people that I enjoyed, and you build and you build and you build. I try not to take it personal anymore. When you care too much, and if you care too much about a particular client that you've done a transaction with, then that can work against you. I think you've almost got to be a little bit removed and not calculated, but why am I here? I'm here to list a property, to give them the best possible service and pitch to them why I'm the best agent for the job. If you don't get it, set up some landmines. If they haven't signed, short agency, Mr. and Mrs. Vendor, really disappointed. I know I would have been the best agent for you, but if it doesn't work out, love to talk to you second time around. Do you mind if I talk to you during the campaign? If you've got any questions, give me a call. With your agency period, it's going to auction. Why don't you keep your agent on your toes and just give them an agency period for 2 weeks after the auction period, so that if it doesn't work out, we can talk again, or you can always extend. So set it up for success a bit later. But you just can't take it personal. Easier to say when you might have blown $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, but you've just got to go on to the next one.
Cool. Got another question from Ash. He's asked, what activities do you do? What activities did you do off the ground running in real estate that you feel propelled your career the most? And question number 2, what's a day in the life of Rick look like today?
Okay. Remind me for question 2 in a minute, because I've got verbal diarrhea, as you can see, so I get off the topic. So the first question was things that propelled me. When I started working in the industry, I was very lucky that I worked under a very, very good lister. So there was always a surplus of properties for me to start working on. So that gentleman, Lou Levy from LJ Levy Real Estate, was my mentor. He would list properties and put me on them. So from that, I would meet people, get my profile out, and that was probably the biggest thing that helped me, and that's why I try and set up my business the way I do, with having my salespeople and giving them profile. I think something that was very, very key to me very early on was me actually writing down, and I hate setting goals. I'm a very unorganized person. I deviate. I don't know about you guys, but 1 minute, you're on the phone talking to someone, and then the phone goes on and on and on. You're supposed to do this. You forgot about this, and there's 10 other things that you forget about. So I get very distracted. But one thing that I have done is something very, very simple. Every time I talk to someone, or try to, I just try and write it down. I've got, I think, 246 notes in my phone, and they're all compartmentalized, whether it's for my surfing, my family, my horses, my different staff members. I make a lot of notes,
Right.
because I am a bit of a dinosaur. I'm 56 and my memory's not the greatest.
Yeah.
But that helped me a lot. Make notes, is the only real tip I can give you.
Cool. The second question that...
Can I just interrupt you for a sec, Kev? I actually spoke to Chris yesterday preparing for this, and one of the things he mentioned was your unwavering work ethic and not getting distracted with going for a coffee with other agents.
Yeah.
Tell me how you structure your day to be at the highest performance.
Okay.
And the mindset behind that.
Is there actually structure in our world? I mean, there's key things that you've got to structure yourself for. You've got to go, what's the first stage of my career that I need to do? I need to prospect. So that you've got to lock in. Now, whether you just lock in 2 hours a week or 4 hours a week, you've got to structure some prospecting in your day. I don't have a very structured day from the point of view that, I guess I do have a very structured day if I think about it. How was this morning? This morning, got up at 6, quickly ran into the water, had a quick surf, grabbed the wife a coffee. Little one gets dropped off daycare, get out through traffic. On the way here, you're talking on the phone, picked up a listing. My lovely wife's telling me how my son's having a sugar fix and I'm a very bad husband. While I'm going, I love you dearly. I got to prepare for a talk this morning. You got to switch. You know, when you're in front of someone, you got to connect. You're talking about some really good agents a moment ago, Alex Phillips and Michael Pallier. Michael's amazing. He is one of the busiest people that I know, but if you see him in the street, he will make eye contact with you, he will shake your hand, and he'll give you 2 minutes of his time, which feels like 5 minutes because he's connected, and then he'll politely move on. What was the question? Structure. So I am not a structured person, but I appreciate that I have a business to run. So how I've structured that is we have regular meetings, number one. So I'm lucky enough to have management that looks after certain things there. I structured to have a coffee meeting with 5 of my staff each week so that I structure in somewhere. And those meetings may not just be have a coffee. It may be, hey, let's go for a walk. Let's multitask at the same time. It may be that meeting happens at an open house at the end of the day. So if you're running a pod, communication may not have to be structured in a way where you're just sitting down all the time. Multitask as much as you can. But I don't have a structured day because I know when I turn this phone back on, there's going to be missed calls of happy vendors, upset vendors, things that haven't gone right. The thing that I do from day one is I've always made sure, because we work generally long hours, I call it I have an AM shift and a PM shift. So I'll start early, I'll do what I've got to do, and then in the middle of the day, I'll take off. I'll take off for about an hour and a half. Now, my passion is horse riding. I do a lot of show jumping. So whether it's coming out this way and going for a ride, or whether it's jumping in the water or going and doing, some meditation or what have you, switch off for an hour and day, recharge for your second part of the day. That's probably the most structured thing that I've been able to do.
When did you implement that?
Yeah, so I probably implemented that a good 10 to 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you start in the morning, and as we all know, our days they're a daily roller coaster. It's not a weekly roller coaster. All of a sudden you've got a lead, you've got a prospect, you think you're going to get a listing, then it doesn't happen. You've got a buyer on a property, you're excited, buyer falls over. Mentally, it's very, very draining. The other thing I would suggest you may want to consider doing, if you don't, is finding someone in your world that you can actually talk to, and probably not someone too close to you. Someone that you can be very open about, whether it's your work life or your family life. If it's a professional person, such as a therapist, even better, because they're trained that way. You can dump your baggage, pay the bill and get out of there. But I think in today's world of high pace and high stress, I think, you know what, I'm happy to dump $150, $200 on somebody and give them all my problems and feel better and walk out of there. I think it's a good service.
Yeah.
It certainly beats some of the older alternatives that we may get caught up in.
Me too. Don't worry. Mate, a question from Rish. If the vendor is overpriced and not willing to listen and realign expectations, what do you do?
Okay. So for vendors overpriced and not prepared, I guess it comes back to, are they overpriced and prepared not to realign their price because you haven't earned their trust? So they're not actually listening to you. And a lot of the time, you're just going to get those vendors that say, I want my price, I want my price. I've got a client at the moment at Birrell Street. The property's worth five and a quarter. She's at $7 million. You know what? I've still got the listing. She said she can't afford to remarket it because the cost of remarketing, if she takes it offline, she can't afford it at the moment. So we're keeping it on there. And it's a listing tool for us. We get inquiry. The inquiry we get from it, we qualify those people, and hopefully we'll pick up some leads from it. So just because, if you're running 8-10 auctions, different story. If you're not, I would suggest that there's still value in keeping your overpriced listings from a lead point of view and from a profile point of view. But one thing we do is we do tend to be quite processed in managing, as I'm sure we all are, managing expectations. Always put things in writing. I'm a big texter. So if we do an open house, we'll send a text after the open homes, make sure we call them over the weekend. Some of us do callbacks on Saturday. Some of us do callbacks on Monday. I always think Saturday's the best while you got people sharp and they've got a bit of time to talk to you, because you're going to get your second round of callbacks later in the week. Just constant communication with your vendors, whether it's on the phone, more often texts, and a weekly report. And in that weekly report, you've just got to be really truthful. Right now, we're in a market that if you haven't got the courage, and I'm going to put my hand up here and say to you that there was 5 campaigns in recent times that I neglected my clients, meaning I haven't had that level of communication. And I'm only human. I started to think, that one, he paid $5.85 million for that block of apartments. He's got a DA, my costs, stamp duty. They're very, very wealthy people. They're not going to sell it. So I neglected that client. And I've got an auction in a week's time, and I've got no buyers for this. So I picked up the phone, set up a meeting, and just had a heart-to-heart and basically said to the client, this is the lay of the land. He knew. Surprise. He knew what the market's doing at the end of the day. I didn't have the courage to confront that scenario, and I was about to miss out. So I think more often than not, if they're not listening to you, you have to find a way to get them to listen to you. I think it's actually a small percentage of clients that are going to be fixed on their price, given what's out in the media right now. And take those copies of those articles that are in the media. If you're watching the TV, get your phone in front and record what's happening in the TV. Send it to your clients. I think a lot of our clients don't listen to us as much as they should because they haven't earned our trust yet. So I think focus on that a little.
Yep. Question from Josh. Have you had an absolute low point in real estate, and how did you overcome it?
You said be truthful, huh?
Yes.
Okay. I've had several, actually. The most recent one was when my wife and I decided to start a new family. And I started getting very anxious over it, not wanting to go down that path. And we decided to start a family. I got a lot of anxiety over it. I got some depression through that as well. And there was a lot happening in my business. I bought out a couple of partners. My cash flow was really, really bad. And I remember sitting in front of my CEO at Raine and Horne, Angus, and saying, and I broke down. So really good for a 53-year-old to break down in front of someone you really respect. It was fantastic. It was one of my highlights of my career. So it was a really low point. And and this is why I always say, go out, get some people to help you if you need. I think it's important to vent and important to talk to someone who's not too close to you. I made some really stupid decisions. I had an asset a building that I had at Bondi, which I bought for $7 million. Interest rates were going to start going up again. This is back when we had the Banking Royal Commission and we had to go principal and interest. So I sold that for 7.5. So I didn't make anything out of it, and subsequently resold it a year and 2 months later for the person that I sold it to, not for 7.5 or 8.5. But for 22 million. Oh. So I feel so good, hurts. So good. So I've had some of those challenges that I can relate to certain people. Now, I'm not saying you might turn around and go, oh, big deal. I've got my own hardship. And you know what? We all have our shit. But it's really interesting that I'm in real estate. I sell something for 7.5, and 14 months later it sells for 22. Luckily, at least we got the com out of it. So I'm a real expert in picking the market.
Got to look at the bright side.
Yeah, that's right. Well, the bright side there, because my kids have actually said to me, Dad, how do you feel about that? And I kind of go, listen, I'm comfortable because we picked up 400,000 in commission, and I'm comfortable because I know I was never going to be the person to get 22. Because if I owned it at 7.5 and somebody offered me 10, I'd go, I am the man, I am the hero, I'm clocking out. And I see that in my stocks as well. I make a little bit of money, I get out, I'm a bit of a chicken, so I don't have the kahunas or the courage to go long, So I'm really actually I'll joke about it.
You're risk averse.
I am risk averse. And I think as you progress through life, you start to work out how much risk you want to put out there. So how I bounced back from that scenario of, oh my God, I'm going to lose everything, was one little piece at a time. I reached out for some help. I started to get people around me that I actually trusted and respected. And, when you're going through a bit of shit, it's amazing how you work out what your friends are. You hear it all the time. But there was probably 4 or 5 people in my world at the time that I was very open with, and they helped me get through it. So don't be Robinson Crusoe.
Yeah. Look, obviously there's a lot of younger guys in this crowd today. And I know because I'm obviously a young guy myself, it's sometimes hard to open up, especially when you're going through tough times, and especially in real estate as well, when it's such an ego-driven industry and it's hard to reach out. What would you say to those people that are in those positions where they are doing a little bit tough? Do you go reach out to a therapist, and is it like at what point do you do that?
Personally, there are therapists and there are therapists, and if you don't feel comfortable saying to your best mate, I'm going to see a therapist, then call it a life coach. I encourage my staff to go see life coaches all the time. I've paid for some of them when they've been having their down moments. I mean, okay, I'm a salesperson, but I'm running a business, and I've also got a lot of staff that haven't had the life experiences that I have. So if I see someone, I'm not saying I do have one in my team that parties really hard and enjoys the alternative lifestyle. I won't mention names. But the reality is you can get on a downward spiral pretty quickly if you're missing out on business, or if you're actually doing really, really well and you're not pissing it up the wall. I'm not allowed to say that. If you're not putting it aside, so to speak. So I think if you're embarrassed by it, keep it to yourself, but go get some help. To me, by opening up, and I've got to be upfront with you, God, some of the therapists that I've gone through, they are so wacky. They need help, really. Yeah. But I kind of go, hang on, you're talking to me like this. I'm feeling a bit better. I'm not so bad. So it doesn't matter what age group you are. I think whether you're planning on growing your business, your family, I think it's good to have a best mate that isn't your best mate. Someone that you can trust, and that you pay them for a service. They can't share it with anyone. And some of the stuff I've spoken about, thank God they can't talk to anyone about it.
Yeah. Feel that. Sorry.
What happens when you are in that state of anxiousness and you have to connect with a client?
Yeah.
What did you do at that point in time? Do you take a step back from the 7 days a week?
Question.
Do you push forward?
No. Okay. So you didn't tell me this was going to be the mental health section, but but it's all good. And I must say, thank you for this morning, because I don't know how many people have gone and had done talks on real estate, but usually the day before you get a few questions, so you can work it out, A, B, C, D questions, so you have a bit of a think about it. Today, you buggers are cold turkey. So I'll walk away from this and say, I shouldn't have said this, I should have said that, but at least it's a little bit raw.
Yeah.
So one thing that, when I was having those moments of really bad anxiety, one thing that I started doing was a lot of people call it meditation. I still don't know what meditation is. I just call it breath work. People talk about yoga. I don't know what yoga is. I just call it a stretch class. Why? I'm a bit of a male, and I don't like those terms so much. I don't associate with it. So I put my own spin on it. But Every time I would go into an appraisal or delivering an offer, I would take my 10, 15 minutes and I would just focus, recap, and just breathe. There would be meetings that I would come out of and I'd have to have another 10, 15 minutes of just breathing just to settle down. I don't know if anyone suffered, and I'm not going to ask people to put their hands up, but if you've ever suffered from anxiety, it can be pretty debilitating. It's real, and until you've had it, you probably can't relate to it. So how I handled those moments was I've got a few apps that I use, and I would do a lot of breath work and prepare for what I'm about to do. It's you know what, it's like anything. It's like courting. You don't just, well, there is a service for that, but you don't go out there and go, well, I just want to have sex with someone. You usually go and you court and you follow a process. There's a system to follow. That's listings.
Definitely. Question from Richard. With such competition in your marketplace, what do you believe your point of difference is during a listing presentation?
I believe, and this happened yesterday actually, where I don't know if you have gone to an appraisal, I'm sure you have, and then you're walking out, the next agent's walking in. Beautiful. Yeah, you know. And so in this instance, the owners actually walked us to the door. The next gentleman, Paul Biller, I hope you're listening, knocks on the door, and then it was like, oh, Paul, how are you? Eva, this is the second best agent in the area. I'm glad you voted the number one and number two. Make a bit of a joke about it at the end of the day. I think that my sense of humour, I think I'm a good listener, but I think what has helped me over the years is reading the room, reading the play. There are times where I will go out with a salesperson and someone asks a question and then they feel they need to keep going on about that question when that was 5 minutes ago. Read the room, ask questions, try and get your clients answering those questions, and then work out how you can connect. We used to have the privilege of meeting a client, doing a pitch, and then coming back to close. You don't have that now. The market's so fast and so aggressive. You know, if they don't sign up now, you can set it on DocuSign 10 minutes later. It's fast paced. You really do have to have a higher strike rate of listing that property first time round.
Yeah. So when you're in the listing presentation, do you have a framework? What's your points? How are you presenting?
So I carry a pack, which I've got in the car, and I've got everything in there. It really annoys me when I go to a listing presentation that one of my colleagues has called me into and they're not prepared. Have you got an agency agreement? No, it's just a price check. What do you mean it's just a price check? How do you know? You know, have your marketing budgets, have your paperwork, have the paperwork half filled in. The amount of paperwork that I throw out going in half filled in and we didn't need it, but I'm there because I don't want to waste time. I don't want to waste time while I'm talking to them, looking down, filling stuff in because I'm losing contact. You break up the flow, so to speak. So I always go into a presentation thinking that this is going to be a listing presentation, not a price check. At the moment, we are calling anyone that's basically bought in the last 3 years, whether they bought it 3 months ago or 3 years ago. Interest rates are on the up. You've got clients that are going to come off 1.8, 1.9%, jumping into 4.5, 5, 5.5, 6% if they're on a low doc or no doc loan. That is frightening for a lot of people. People will think about that last minute. So there's going to be stock out there. So to get back to the question, sorry.
Let's hit that, guys. Just talking to my guys. Let's hit that today.
So to answer the question, I go in prepared with all the information and all I'm looking for is connect, get them to do the tour, see if they specifically talk about a particular room. Yesterday they were telling us how this bedroom used to be a ballroom, so I think maybe they're a dancer. Connect. Try and find out a price from them. I often will ask a question of, forget about the market price or what I think, but it's got to be tempting to you to sell this amazing home. You've been here for 3 days. Is there a range that makes sense to you? So try and get a price, because let's face it, how many times do we get shut down on price? Yesterday I went on something 1.1, 1.2. Paul Biller went in at 1.5 to 1.6. And already we're on the back foot. That happens to all of us at the end of the day. Is price is a big thing. We always try and have sales there so that they can at least compare. But to me, it's about getting information out of them and keeping communication.
Definitely. Just coming back to the breath work, just a question from Rinat. He's asked, can you elaborate a bit more on what you do with your breath work?
Sure. Yeah, no, that's fine. So I actually worked out very quickly. I went out and paid $3,500 for medication. I've paid a bit of that too. Meditation course at Paddington, and I got a little bit out of that. But I also worked out very, very quickly that there's some really good apps. There's one that I use, Breath, at the moment, that you subscribe to. It's $15 a month, and there's different genres that you can lock into, and it may be breathing and holding for 4. Breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out. It's just to relax and reset what's inside. We take what's inside for granted, and I'm quite happy to talk about this. Guys, I'm 56. I've been divorced 3 times. I don't really give a shit what people think anymore, unless you're my vendor. But seriously, tap into it. A lot of us are alpha males out there. We've got a lot of ego. I used to think ego was a bad thing, but I actually think ego now is actually a good thing. I think it's one of the things that drives us. But maybe go and have a lesson or two from a meditation point of view. It's quite inexpensive. Download some videos, but it's basically different ways of breathing. That's what it is to me. I don't make it anything else that I'm trying to find enlightenment or anything else. That's not me. There are people trying to find enlightenment. That's cool. I respect that, but that's not in my world at the moment.
Yep. Question from Rish, and this goes for a few guys out there. If you're starting in a new suburb today, what specific activities would you do daily to break in?
Good question, because I asked Ben if you guys were recruiting, because I was looking for a lifestyle change. So, okay, so I started in a new environment. I know nobody. I absolutely know nobody, but I know I need to get some runs on the board. What would I do? I am a little bit lazy, believe it or not. And I like to try and get people referring business to me. So I'd probably either go and join a networking group. I don't know if they're all over.
BNIs.
Yeah, BNIs, for example. I joined one very early on. I didn't really like the people that were there. So I thought, hey, why don't I just start my own? So you bring on your own solicitor, your own accountant, your own financial planner. I don't have a lot of hair, so I get my hair cut every week. Yeah. It's $20, but I'm a bit of a haircut slut. So I go around to 5 different barbers, No, it's true. You guys have got a lot more hair. You can't do it every week. So I've got one up on you, and ladies. But what I'm trying to say is, tongue in cheek, develop a network of people that are going to refer to you at the end of the day. If your principal says, you've got to refer to this person, refer a little bit. But refer a bit more to your own network at the end of the day, whether that's a solicitor, financial planner, an accountant. So that would be the first thing that I would start. That takes time. The other thing I would probably do, depending on the size of your office, if you've got 1 or if you've got 40, is I would help my peers out. And I'd say, can I help you? Be it opens, would you consider putting my name on a board and online? And in return, the next listing I get will be yours. So try and share your profile. Ask. They're going to say yes or no. You're 50-50 chance at the end of the day. So I think today we're in a world of building your profile. I've just listed a new employee. To me, my employees are listings at the end of the day. I've got to nurture them. I've got to work. I've got to manage it. So young Kate's come on board. She was with another company for 2 years. What's happening in the industry, a lot of people letting people go. We had the opportunity to secure her. She's a gun. She started with me and she's on 5 properties. But the deal is, she's on 5 properties, but she's got to bring in 3 in the next 3 months. I don't care if they're overpriced, but she's got to give back a bit of love. And that love is profile. I'm not necessarily looking for the sale. I'm always looking for, have listings, build my profile, and then you'll get the crappy lead, you'll get the good lead. But become an attraction agent as quickly as possible when you're starting in a new area. Do the corny letterbox drops, pay for your own photocopying, get your name out there, get the old cards that no one uses anymore. You're doing cards, be a bit different with your cards, depending on company policy, of course. I carry a card around that I pinched from Westpac many, many years ago. And instead of just having my normal card, it's one of those calculator cards. I don't know if you've seen them. So you pull it out. Thank God interest rates have gone up because it's now relevant because it's 3, it says 7%. It was irrelevant not long ago. So try and have a point of difference. meet people. If you don't have a listing and you're starting in a new area, go to your competitors' open homes. At the end of the day, meet your competitors, develop a bit of a relationship. You don't have to like them. You just got to work with them. You got to be respectful of who's out there. You got to get your face and your name out there as quickly as possible. If you don't have anything and you're working for a company, if you're helping out your peers, Max, John, Sam, can I post this on social media for you and tag you in? Do some of their legwork. Build your profile.
Yep. Brand's important.
What do you do now at your stage to keep building profile? Does it change?
Yeah, it doesn't. I am at a stage where I'll be really upfront. About 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, I had to get back on what I call get back on the tools. So I had to get this little thing. I had to go into my database and
on the blower.
I had to pick up the phone and say, hello, Steve, it's been 3 years. Notice you purchased the property, markets all over the shop. We've had some really good successes. What's happening in your life? Would you like me to come and do a price check? And I couldn't believe how hard those first few calls were. You know, I've been doing this for 32 years, but I've been delegating that activity. And you know what? I don't really want to do that activity. Now I do. And so to me, get back to basics. Understand how your clients communicate. If it's your generation, you're probably going to be more tech savvy, more digital savvy. If it's someone my age, depending on what you're trying to list, they're going to want to knock on the door. They're going to want a phone call. They're going to want to meet you. So learn to talk on their level. This is one of the things I talk about being a chameleon, diversify. So what I'm actually doing at the moment is picking up the phone, and it's amazing how by doing an action, things start to come in. I'm a big believer of working a patch, so working a community. That might be a next question. Thank you for asking. So I'm a big believer of, I never wanted to be an environment where if I listed something, say in Bondi, I'd have to go to Piedmont. To me, I go, well, to get on my scooter and go from Bondi to Piedmont, that's 15 minutes. That's one campaign that I've lost. To come back, that's another campaign that I've lost. If I'm going to take something out of my area, it's got to be worthwhile. Otherwise, delegate. Be known as the person in your patch. From that, you're going to get referrals, you're going to get market share, you're going to be the attraction agent, as they call it. It's actually really easy to do. It's so annoying for me, who's been in the industry for so long, that this is actually happening to a very young generation right now, because they should all just come to me, but they don't.
Can we rewind back to the scooter?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if many people know, but you don't drive a car around, do you?
I do drive a car.
You do drive a car?
I drive a car out here. I go out west a fair bit, so I don't like doing that on the bike.
Yeah.
But to me, it's about time management. Actually, there's two things that I try and work on: time management and keeping it real at the end of the day. Do what you do. If you want to go and buy a Lamborghini and that's your goal and it makes you happy, don't judge. Do it. Do what makes you happy. My son just bought a Harley. He's copped a hiding from me, but I appreciate it. Makes him happy. I've tried to remember certain things, especially in the eastern suburbs, where everyone tends to, not everyone, a large percentage of people are very flash. And I've always tried to be the agent that isn't the flash one. I've had clients, I remember a client saying to me when I had an old Land Cruiser with, I've had horses for a while, with hay in the back. And they saw me pull up, they saw some hay, and they've just gone, this guy's real. We want to list with this guy. I already had the foot in the door. Now, if I tack that same hay to Vaucluse on a waterfront, I don't think it's going to gel. So understand your marketplace at the end of the day. So I drive around when it's sunny and it's dry on a scooter because it takes me 3-4 minutes to get to places. On Saturdays, we've got 15 minutes to get to somewhere and have it preset and opened up. So for me, it's time management. It's cheap on fuel. I filled up the other day at $11.50, not $111.50. To me, the clientele that gravitate to me like me keeping it simple. I like doing my surfing. They don't feel that they need the flash. And if I'm going to see a client that wants the flash, you know what? I'll put the suit and the tie on. I'll wash my car and I'll bring the little forward drive Merc and I'll play the role, be the chameleon.
Yep.
And if you're getting a scooter, make sure you get your microphone so you don't lose time at the end of the day. So you're actually talking while you're riding.
Wow.
Yeah.
Jeez. And they don't hear wind, nothing.
No, they're fantastic. Wow. They're fantastic. Wow. And you don't have to touch the phone. You just cough into it. It's activated by sound. So you're always working no matter where you're going. But I must say, during our amazing wet summers that we've had, it's been nice to be back in the car.
I bet. Question from Harry again. When do you start putting pressure? Oh, let's skip that one. Marco.
Look, guys, we're talking really open and honest here, so happy to share what I
think to answer your question, Harry, from day one. Marco's question is, what did you implement to improve your listing presentations?
Okay, a PA, a support person who can organise me. For those of you who are disciplined and highly organised, I take my hat off to you. I'm not that person. And I do find a lot of highly successful salespeople have a high level of disorganisation. And I think that's because you just get so busy at the end of the day and you forget things. So a big part of it was putting on a support person. My first support person was it was not a great experience. I had to come up with the money. My employer at the time wasn't interested in helping me that way. So I had to come up with the money. I had no idea how to run another person. So I'd spend half my day trying to keep the other person busy because I wanted busy because I'm paying them $35,000 a year and I don't want to waste it. But it was taking away from what I did. So I think before you put that person on, talk to other people that have got support people and get an idea of what is required there. Get a support person is probably a key thing that I can think of off the top of my head.
Yep. Cool.
What about on the negotiation side? I saw you did 88 Military Road.
Yes.
Dover Heights. In a downward market, you've sold that at a ridiculous price.
Yes.
Can you run me through the thought process and how you achieve a cracking negotiation?
Okay. I'll just ring my two salespeople that did the negotiation and they'll be able to tell you. So what I'm trying to say is that was look, see, here you go. Profile. I sold 88 Military Road. The reality was there was three of us. There was one person that got the lead. Another agent also from our same office got in the door. They'd been working the vendor. And I also had a relationship with that vendor. We worked it as a team at the end of the day. That client was adamant, absolutely adamant that they were not going to sell. They wanted $10.5 million. They'd bought it for $6.2 million a year and a month earlier. They painted the bedrooms and put some carpet in. And we sold it for $10.8 million, 6.2 to 6.2 to 9.8. Pretty good capital growth. But there was a situation where we had a vendor, a captain of business, who is very much, I'm not coming off my price. This is what I want. And it was very much a case of managing expectations by comparable sales, what's in the media, even when you are getting to a situation where do not keep sending me this information. We have a duty to let our vendors know exactly what's happening in the marketplace. So keep chipping away at educating your clients as to what's happening out there.
How do you do that?
Yeah, so we have ground level we have our WhatsApp group for all the salespeople. I'm sure you've got one of those as well. We try to keep our WhatsApp group clean because we show that when we're going in on listing presentations, how we work as a team rather than the Serrao team, the Smith team and the Jones team. So we have a Raine and Horne team, so to speak. So on there, if anyone's listed a property, often they'll pull out there, we've just listed this, we've got a sneak preview. If anyone's got a buyer, you could go through that and it's a listing tool at the end of the day. What was the question?
How do you educate your vendors?
Yeah, okay, thank you. So how do I educate my vendors? From the WhatsApp group and what we see in the media, we will always, with our reports, our weekly reports, send out comments as to what's happening in the marketplace. So there'll be snippets of these ads. Use that validation. I'm a big believer of having one-on-one meetings at the end of the day. If you have to, maybe a Zoom, but I think get in front of them as much as possible. Make sure that your clients believe you and trust you. And I think that's very hard to do just on the phone. So I'm very fortunate that when I work a property, I've got another person working it with me. That allows them to do the email responses, the second reply to the emails, the callbacks and what have you, and I can spend more time on the vendor management. Yeah. And that vendor management really is, hi Ariella, just want to let you know, look, there's really nothing much to talk about today. You know, Lindsay's waiting on his valuation to come through, but I just wanted to let you know. So if you got I don't know who has or who hasn't bought a property in this room, but that's probably one of the best things you could probably do is have bought a property or missed out on a property or pretend to. So if you want to, you got to be able to feel how a buyer is feeling at any given time and how a vendor is feeling at any given time. I know if I'm selling something, I want to feel that I'm the only agent, the only listing that agent has got. I'm a high touch person. You know, I'm getting some horses, some mares inseminated at the moment. I do a bit of breeding, and I'm going to one of the best vets in Sydney. And if I leave a message and they haven't called me that day, I'm like, what's going on? I'm your one and only. They've got thousands of clients, but they've found a way via text, via photos, and a late call to communicate with me. So communication is king.
Definitely.
How do you... Being a buyer's agent on this side of the fence, a lot of the time we'll get clients from your lack of neglect.
Yes.
What's your take on being an agent who services a vendor to get them the best price?
Yes.
Or an agent who also manages the buyers to then create a flow of business?
I think buyer's agents are an industry that's growing very, very rapidly. And I think that's been on the back of generally us being vendors agents doing buyer work very, very poorly. I mean, let's face it, I'll put my hand up. When the market's booming, I'm there listing. My buy work is very, very poor.
Just come to the auction.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
You know, follow the process at the end of the day. It's about listing. Now it's about listing. But now you should have your 10, 20 buyers, hot buyers that hopefully have got something to sell. So keep it simple. You know, if I open up my database this morning, I'm going to get anxiety. So if you want to see a 56-year-old getting anxiety, I'll press a button if you really want to see it. Why? Because there's hundreds of things in there. If you go to my car, I've got my paper diary and I've got 16, 18, 20 things I've got to get through today. So there are times I don't get it on my database. You guys are great. You're very nifty in tech, and I think that's amazing. That's not my world. My world is write all these little notes down and follow those basic things up that are important. There's nothing worse when you lose a listing and you go, oh, I didn't get back to them. So use your tech to support you with reminders, but don't complicate it at the end of the day. Can you ask me the question again?
No, I've had a mind blank. I was looking at my next question.
Oh, that's fine. I don't think I answered that. As you can see, when I'm in listing presentations, I just focus on that conversation and what's going on. Hence why I keep asking you for questions at the end of the day. I haven't got Alzheimer's. I've been checked twice, actually. So I'm okay.
But yeah, it was more just about, do you focus on getting the best outcome for your vendors?
Yeah.
Or do you also want to think of the buyer?
I've always, I'm very proud to say that I've never taken a bribe. I've never, but once, bought my own listings, nor bought my own listings from whatever company I work from. So I've always been recognised as a vendor's agent and been very, very proud of what people say, well, what's your fix? My fix sometimes is when we play the game and we get that, and the vendor's gone, yes, I'll sell it for 1.8, and you got them 1.875, 300. You know, I like that. It's like, that was my mind game of getting that little bit extra. I love odd numbers at the end of the day. I know it sounds corny, but it just shows that you've tried to squeeze the buyer as much as possible. People remember that. Don't forget, we do this every day. You know, we're on repetitive mode. Your vendor, they have no experience. They're suspicious of everybody. They're suspicious of us. You know, we have a much better reputation in the marketplace, but it's not completely clean at the end of the day. So you've got to try and put yourself in their shoes and understand how nerve-wracking it is at the end of the day. We generally do buyer work very badly, but I say that based on my experience and how I've done buyer work. So if I offend anyone, I'm sorry. If I was starting out today, I would be focusing on the buyers that have got something to sell. Yeah, and if depending on your situation, if you're part of a pod or an EBU, then you've got a relationship there. But I think buyer work is probably at the moment a lot more important because there are agents in our area and it's highly competitive, which will conjunct with you right now. They want to get their listings sold. If you've got a stock sheet, go through your stock sheet, call different agents to say, be upfront. Will you give me a split on this? What's the split? Work on other people's stock if your company allows you to. To me, if you work good buyers that have got something to sell is always my preference. Because to me, if I'm going to be putting in the work, I'm going to get a couple of dollars, but I want to try and get the listing out of it at the end of the day. Yeah, servicing them. But I think buyers agents are going to continue to grow.
Question from Tommy. What do you say to vendors to build or create urgency to list now and not next year?
Can I answer that question in a moment? Just on your buyer work and being a vendor's agent, just also be cautious. There are many times that we will have temptation put in front of us, and the temptation is going to be, hey, look, get it for us and we'll get you the listing, give you our listing, get it for us and we'll give you 10 grand on the side. If you haven't experienced that, you will. Just remember that 10 grand or the listing that you're supposed to get, they're going to remember what you've just done at the end of the day. And you know what? People talk. So when you fall into that bribe, that's always going to be hung over your head at the end of the day. Just wanted to share that because I used to see that happening a lot. And when I'd hear about it, I'll be upfront. I used to use it in my presentations. And I still do. I won't mention agencies, but I'll say, oh, yeah, that agency, they sold it to someone in their office. We sold one around the corner for 3.6. They sold it for 3.3 for someone in their office. You got to use what you got to use legally and in a nice-ish way to be ahead of your competitor.
Do what it takes.
Do what it takes within
reason.
Do
what it takes. Yeah,
within reason.
Definitely. Sorry, the question was from Tommy. What are you doing or saying to vendors to build or create urgency to list now and not next year?
Okay, so my dialogue's very simple at the moment. The media is helping me with it. Mr. and Mrs. Vendor, do you realise that already this week, and actually this is factual, we've had 2, 3, 4 people call me that are on 1.8%, 1.98%. One's coming off in February on their fixed rate. Another one's coming off in March. They're going to be jumping into anywhere from 4.5% to 6%. What does that mean? Not a lot to you because they're going to turn around and generally say, oh, but I used to be on 21% 25 years ago. Maybe not in that accent. We've got a slightly different accent in our area. But I try and put it into dollar terms. So I go, well, if your property is worth $2 million and you're going to have to pay an extra 3%, how much is that per year that you have to pay on interest? And don't forget, you've got to earn it, so you nearly double. There's not too many people that are just going to find $50,000, $100,000, $150,000. What we believe is going to happen in my scripts at the moment is we believe what's going to happen is people leave things to the last minute, and next year they'll start to feel the pain. We will get a lot more supply. It's probably a better market to be buying in than selling. And that's pretty much the simple dialogue we're using right now.
Yeah.
And other clients that... what we're also trying to explain to people is get cashed up now if you're upgrading. You know, that's a really good market to tap into.
What are you doing for the reverse? Let's say I come to you, I've got a buyer for your property, but given the fact interest rates are rising, I'm not a motivated buyer per se.
Very good.
How are you?
Here's where you're going to be a chameleon. So the scripts to the buyers is completely different. The scripts to the buyers at the moment is, I think there's been a real overreaction to the interest rates at the end of the day. You're only talking about people that have bought in the last 3 years. Before that, we had high interest rates. So whoever's bought in the last 3 years, you're banking on the property that you want in the specific area you want coming up and being a lot cheaper. May not be the case. We get clients that want to be in a particular hood, in a particular village, in a particular street. Now, that street and that area may not come up for 6, 9 or 12 months' time. So I think it's a matter of putting doubt into people's minds that now is actually the sweet spot to be buying and maybe not later, because that property may not come up the one that they are looking for. And at the end of the day, what we have found, and I do find that to be the case when the market contracts, is that stock is starting to tighten up. We're not getting the big spring rush in our area that we thought we were going to get. So I usually say in our area, there's a lot of old money. A lot of people have paid off their mortgages. They know what 7, 8, 9% is like, and they simply just don't sell. So you got to work the other side at the end of the day as well.
Yep. Where are we? Question from Josh. Would you drop your commission to get business or maintain a standard of service and value and sacrifice the listing?
Yeah, I'm very commercial on my fees. I'll be upfront with you. Yesterday, what did we pitch on? We pitched on a house, 9.5 to 10 million. We initially went in at 1.85%, including GST, and we've renegotiated that to 1.5. I went in on an apartment that I'd like to get, but I'd like to get it because I really want to get it over the other agent, to be really truthful. And so we're at 1.5 on that. I have a theory, and I kind of go this way. If I'm selling a $1.5 million property, let's say, and I think that's a fair price out this way, or a couple of $1 million. Let's say $2 million property. At 2%, that's $40,000. If I list that property, if they want me to be commercial, and let's talk about tiered structures and performance scales in a moment. So I then go, if I list that at 1.5, if they really want me, and I think the other side of this conversation is don't think that you're the only good agent out there. You know, with technology today and with market share today, there's a lot of really good agents, and there's some really good agents in this room that if you came up against each other, it may be, I had to flip a coin because you're so good. Yeah, everyone's marketing's pretty good. If you've gone through what you've gone through in the last few years, we've all got good photographers. We've got good. The bar is up here. So I don't have the analogy of, well, if I'm not going to drop my pants, but I have a reasonable range. If I'm not commercial, am I prepared to miss out on it if they're motivated? No, I'm not. If I'm not going to get 2% and make $40,000, but I'm going to go in at 1.5% and make $30,000, and that's going to take care of my mortgage, my family, yeah, I'm going to do it for 1.5%. But what I will also do is, whether I'm at 1%, yes, 1%, there are often in the East where we'll start at 1% tiers, 1.25%, 1.5%. That's the reality, guys. But try to then come back and put in a buffer or a performance scale that if you're listing it on a lower amount, that if you get X amount, you get a bigger share of the pie. So maybe go, okay, why don't we reduce the base? If the decision is you're going to run with me, we reduce the base, but over $2 million, that's 10%. Or 5%. I've had agents in our office that have made more money on the amount above than on the base. You know, Alex from our office listed a property in Darling Point Road last year. Reserve was 4.2. He was on 10% and then 20% above 4.2 million. Crazy auction. Went for over $6 million. It's like, so when you're going into list, if they're asking you to come down, maybe go both ways. That's something to consider if you're not already doing that at the moment. Yeah, it's great.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's really good.
That is insane. Question from Ash. Do you ever have burnout, and how have you managed that in your career? Do you break your year up in quarters and go away on mini holidays to reset, or anything like that?
Yes, I've had burnout. We've discussed a little bit about that earlier. There are some agents like Alex, you brought up Alex. I respect him immensely for many reasons. And one of the reasons is that he's able to break up his year and have these regimented breaks. I'm truthfully too scared to have a long break. I think that if I was to have a break for 6 weeks, I don't think that I would want to come back. I think I'd probably want to continue that break. If I speak very honestly today, I do genuinely still love what I do, but how I manage my life is I'll have the usual Christmas break. Now that we've got a young one, we'll start to have a little bit more holidays, but I have a break every day. So my break is start out with something for myself early in the morning. I like going for a surf or a swim. So I've got that opportunity that I can do that at the water. You'll have something else. I do something for myself in the morning. I go hard and I have a break in the middle of the day. Mondays, I try to just be on the phone. So that's my holiday where I'll do my other passions and my me time. But I'm not having 2 offices, being a salesperson. We've got, I think, 26, 28 salespeople, a 3.5-year-old and a 31-year-old. I'm very hard with breaks. When I get to the next level where I'm ready to clock out, then I think I'll probably go, okay, I'll just handpick a few listings and my business will be my rent roll and my salespeople and supporting them a lot more. But I'm not at that level yet. Yep. And I don't think my addiction will allow me to be that for a long time.
Yep. Reflecting back on my own career in real estate, the hardest period that I saw wasn't being an assistant, wasn't being an agent with momentum. It was that beginning stage of starting off as your own agent and putting on your first assistant. That was the hardest part for me. What did you do at that point when you didn't have an assistant? What were the tasks you were doing? What was the tipping point for you that got you over the line? And how did you stay motivated? Because I know it gets really tough.
Yeah, so when I had my first assistant, as I mentioned earlier, I spent more time trying to organise her than actually doing the dollar productive tasks that I am good at. As I've said, I'm very disorganised. I hate paperwork, but I like to think that I'm reasonably good with people. I try and connect. So I think that what's important here, I think going off debit credit was a really big thing for me mentally, and that's been a big thing. Having the luxury of getting a few dollars I don't know if you have debit credit models or not in your group, but I think having the luxury of taking your 500, 600, 800, whatever it may be these days, home is a real Achilles heel, because until your back's to the wall and you go, I need to do this for me because my bank account is diminishing and I need to pay for petrol if you're at home or not at home, but you've got your own responsibilities. Until you feel that, I don't think the switch flips. If you're on debit credit, I would get off, and they haven't paid me to do this, by the way. But seriously, I've seen Dion Markovitz, who was Raine and Horne's #1 international agent last year, salesman-wise, not principal-wise. He attributed coming off debit credit as his biggest thing. He was so shit scared that it just launched him into prospecting. And still today, he's one of the first ones in and last ones out of the office. So it can be a crutch.
Yep.
I think that if you've got an asset, if you're fortunate enough to have bought some property, get a redraw facility. The sooner that you can start thinking of yourself as running Harry Real Estate Pty Ltd under the banner that you're a business person and not an employee. The sooner that you can do that, that's the best thing that you will achieve mentally, as nervous as you may be. But I went through some tough times switching over, trying to organise people. It's called reaching out. You'd be amazed how many performers, medium, top level, whatever they are, you reach out to people in your industry. Maybe don't do it in your core group and your core area. Go outside the area. They will help you. People are really helpful with their time, and I think they enjoy helping other people. I know I get that a little bit, and if it's not my direct competitor down the road, happy to share. So reach out, ask questions to other people that are doing what you want to do. Don't reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
Copy and paste.
Do you think it can be premature going out off the debit credit for those that are at that point now?
Well, what is that point? Well, what is the point when you come off your debit credit? Have you been doing it? To me, I would be going, can I list properties? If I can prove to myself that I can list and sell a property a month, I'd be getting off debit credit. One property a month, list and sell. If you're confident you can do that, get off debit credit. Maybe talk to the hierarchy about how they may help you. In that instance, maybe it's a loan of some sort. Maybe it's, I'm about to do something with not one of my highest earners where he came on board for the first 2 years debit credit. His debit credit is coming up. He's now going Pty Ltd, and we're going to do a loan interest-free for his PA. Really? And the other support people will help him train that PA. So we help each other out.
How good.
I believe in the guy. The guy's just sold a $10.8 million property. So he's proving himself. He's hungry. He's getting married. He's just gotten into debt. Woohoo! I'm excited. So to me, he's going to be a $1.5, $2 million earner in the next 3 years. I'm very confident.
Yeah, for sure.
Happy to support that, but not go, well, here it is for nothing. You got to earn it. You got to dig in. But it's worth the digging in. You can make. Jesus, I don't know, what does the Prime Minister earn? I figure the bribes and everything else, but what does the Prime Minister really earn at the end of the day? I mean, we can make double, triple the amount. We're very, very lucky. We really are, and I don't think we appreciate how lucky we are. Yeah.
Definitely.
Sorry, Mr. Albanese.
Mate, in terms of when these markets come into play and the market starts falling, a lot of agents that have been in the industry for only the past year or two, they've only seen a good market, and now they see a market like this and they get unsettled and they get unnerved. It's a time where I've seen a lot of people leave the industry too. What would you say to people that are sitting on the fence?
We saw that last time around, and we're seeing it again now. And it may be that they're leaving the industry because they've been let go, because they've been as part of a group. And if you're that person, don't take it upon yourself to go, well, I can't do it. I'm not worthy enough. It's just because that person who you were working under at the time, the circumstances changed. We've had people join us that were extras in a team and joined us, and then now within 6-12 months, they're kicking some really good goals. So it just means that the next opportunity may be the right opportunity. We tend to find a lot of people leave the industry and go into recruiting. They become buyer's agents. There's more buyer's agents out there that, and I got to say, I feel for a lot of the buyer's agents out there right now. They're not doing deals. 6 months ago, different story. Right now, a lot of buyers are sitting on their hands, so they're suffering. I think that if you're going, this is all too hard, talk to some mentors, talk to other successful people, whether it's someone on your team, myself, there's many people out there. This is actually a market of opportunity. This isn't the hard market. I had one of my salespeople come to me not long ago and said, I'm really struggling right now. I've been in the industry for 7 years. I've never seen a rate rise. I've gone, oh, yeah, never thought of that. Yeah, never seen a rate rise. Okay, I need to give that person some direction. So if you're stuck, don't be the alpha male. Reach out to people that you respect. And I know in this group, there are people that are going to help each other. You've got, I'll call it a sales manager's role in the group. Shannon's joined you.
Yeah,
I believe, there's good experienced people that will give you direction, but don't give up. This is actually the market for you to grow your business. This is actually the market for market share. I had an agent, so silly. I had an agent, I'm going to say, pinch a listing from me in my core area, meaning that I didn't get back to them quickly enough. I thought one of my associates was chasing it. I missed out. They sold it. We all know what happens, right? They met all the people that live in the area. He's picked up another one that I was chasing because they liked that agent's personality. So he's listed another one. And guess what? In my street, another one just popped up with that same agent. So from one moment of relaxation, I've lost 3 listings. 10.8, 11.2, probably 7. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. So when you ask me about listings, I take on whatever I can get. I don't care if it's a studio, because you don't know the person that's selling that studio, who they're going to refer you to at the end of the day. I'm not just looking for the flash. Sometimes selling 5 smaller properties is easier and quicker than waiting for that time to sell the one big property. It's all cash flow.
Yeah.
And I've forgotten the question.
What about scripts and dialogue?
Yeah.
When you're connecting, you're big on connecting. Do you focus on any scripts and dialogue?
Yeah, I once again, I think if you're starting out, I don't know what your group has. I know with Raine and Horne, we've got a lot of scripts and dialogues in there. But I think one of the things that helped me out a lot was getting a group and not waiting for my boss to organise this. It was, hey, Johnny, Sam, let's have a scripts and dialogue session. Learn to run your own business. You're not an employee after today. You got to change your mindset. So if you're stuck and you don't know what the scripts and dialogues are, ask people. Work out who's going to help you and you help them in return. Whether you talk to, Tom Panos, Josh Fegan, there's some really good trainers, Lee Woodward, there's some great trainers out there. But don't wait for your boss to do it. You're running your business. Get out there and do it yourself. Invest. It's tax deductible at the end of the day. My biggest challenge was, you got to remember, I started when we didn't have the internet. And I remember my boss at the time, who is my mentor, and I respect him dearly. I remember him saying to me, I said, "Oh, Lou, such and such, should we get one of these web pages? I think they're pretty cool. We get some photos." I didn't know what was going to happen with the internet. I said, "This is pretty cool. I think this is good." He says, "Rick, I've seen it all. They've come, they've gone. It's just another gimmick." 32 years on, what's this thing? The internet drives our life, But so what happened? I got my own web page. I had to get my own CRM. I had to go my own PA. You got to drive yourself. And if you're in an EBU, show your worth at the end of the day. Stand out.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Verbal diarrhea again.
It's okay. Question from Jake. What are some processes you do to make sure your mindset is always on point?
Keep it simple, daily exercise. As I said, I like to go in the water. People go on about these ice baths. I've tried that a few times. I hate it. So just get a leaky wetsuit. It's just as good. So how do I ensure my mindset's... I now have the attitude that I do the best that I can. Yesterday, I did all my activities that I could. I still had some calls to make. I got to about 8:15 and then I've gone, you know what, I've got to shut shop now because now I've got family time. So if there's some people that got missed out on that communication, I just simply sent them a text. And the text would have gone along the lines, "I've got some very late meetings. I apologise. I'll reach out to you tomorrow." So you're still communicating. I think you've got to have some me time, but be productive in that me time. Exercise to me has been very, very important. I'm not one of those people to lift weights 7 days a week. If you are, that's great. Work out what works for you. But I have AM and PM, and in the middle of the day, I take my hour and a half to recharge. I'm now in a scenario where I have to respect that I've got other responsibilities as well. If you're in a relationship or family, and there has to come a time where you've just simply, I don't know if anyone's got young children here, but you've just got to be connected, and you've got to put that aside and deal with that later in the evening. Luckily, our job allows us to mix and match when we can communicate in different ways. One thing, I'm on the iPhone and I miss being on the Samsungs. The Samsungs, you used to be able to do all your messages and then send them out at different times the next day. It was beautiful. 6 o'clock in the morning, 6:10 in the morning. The iPhone doesn't do that. But there's many ways to communicate, use them. One thing that I struggle with is possibly with all these platforms that we have to communicate, whether it's the WhatsApp, whether it's Messenger, your phone, your texts, your emails, it can be very overwhelming. So try to have someone, if you're working with someone that's responsible for that, and work out what your skills are. If you're the people person, focus on being the people person and hire or try and delegate the skills that you're not good at. Mine's paperwork.
Yep.
And remembering questions.
Question. If there's someone on your database, you've got a client, they're not selling, but you've got their first name, last name, mobile number, address. How often do they get contacted and how are they contacted?
Okay. So there's someone on the database.
Not selling.
Not selling. So one, you've got to be careful with the unsubscribes. The amount of times you send out your emails and you get these unsubscribes coming back, that can be very ineffective. So I think if you've got someone in your database, try to be as specific as you can why they're in your database. So the bottom level would be, if they're not selling, your touch points are going to be Easter, Christmas. If there's a religious event, we've got a lot of Jewish holidays, so we send our cars to that. If you've got their birthday, don't be a tight ass. Go and get a lottery ticket and a birthday card, send it out. You'd be amazed what that $4 or $5 investment will give you back in terms of relationships and rapport building. So each Monday we try and have someone that goes through all the birthdays, sets them out. If you don't want to do that, Get them on Facebook. You get your alerts. If you still use Facebook, I still do. I'm a dinosaur. I know it's all Insta now, but and TikTok, I've got to get onto that sooner or later. But there are ways to communicate with people. So develop the relationship. At minimum, Christmas, Easter, a religious holiday, make contact with them, whether it's with a card or a phone call. If you've got volume, then it's probably going to be an email or a card. If you got their birthday, and there's no reason why you can't get, if someone's bought or sold, or if you've transacted, if you get a copy of their license for compliance, then you'll get all that details. So you're building up your referral network at the end of the day. I think it's still very, very good to have a touch point every quarter in terms of a newsletter of some sort. They've been done to death, but it's just another way, or at minimum, at least send them texts for good news. Yep. You know, if they own a property in the area and they're not selling right now, at least send them a text with your details as to what's been selling.
So a lot of the guys here today are assistants, associate agents. What would be your top 3 tips to the younger guys in the room?
Okay. My top 3 tips as a sales associate today. Do the best that you can for the person that's paying you, but start building your own personal profile at the end of the day. No matter what you're doing in that group, you are an asset and someone else is contributing to that asset. So you've got a team reward system going. I would set your own personal goals as to where you want to be in the next 12 months, the next 2 years. Beyond that, it's all irrelevant for me. We could all be dead. I mean, who knows, right? So try to keep it a little bit real. If I am a sales associate, I want to grow my profile, use social media as much as possible. Let everybody know about your wins, and those wins are listing, selling via social, via letterbox drops, via Texas. And let your market know a little bit about yourself as well via social. You know, we don't all have to be suit and tie people, polished shoes, clean cars, you know. Let a little bit of your own personality out there into the marketplace. But I think the most important thing is to get, as a sales associate, brand awareness of you and market share of you. Service a small group of people really, really well. And the servicing that group of people could be your network that's referring to you, as we discussed, an accountant, a solicitor, your hairdresser, whatever it may be. If you're part of a team, talk to the person that you're part of the team with, whether you can give out referral fees. We're very big on referral fees if they've got an ABN. You know, can you imagine going to a hairdresser and saying, if you refer me someone and list it, I'll give you 20% of the fee? Like, you just charge me $20 for a haircut and I can give you 10 grand? But I'm serious. Get out there. Be known in real estate. I remember going and sitting in coffee shops. I do a lot of business in coffee shops, and early on, I'd actually have my sandwich board, and my wife would say, "Geez, you're really corny." And I go, "No, I'll bring it out of my car. I'll put it next to me." It's
do you
closed.
still do that?
I don't now, no. But I did that for a long, long time, and I don't now as much because I do have reasonably good market share in the area. But what I do is I do a lot of sponsorship. So one of my main sponsors that we contribute to is the North Bondi Surf Club, and I like that for many reasons. But they also have the rashies with your name and your number on it. So I'll go somewhere and there'll be little kids running around with my rashie on it, and I go, "Hello, you enjoying the nippers?" You know, I'm that person. Yeah, you've got to be careful because, you know, I mean, hey, be really, really careful. Make sure there's a parent there. But what I'm trying to say to you is you get mileage. So on sponsorship, there's no point sponsoring something if you're not going to partake in it either. Don't just throw money at it and not enjoy the benefits of being there. But I think also get involved in your community if you're a sales associate. You want to be known. I always had a goal. I wanted to be better than my mentor when I was a sales associate. He's feeding me, but I'm building up my database. But don't make it too big. Don't make it too complex. Just work with a handful of good people.
Yep.
Yeah, that was a bit of fun. Yeah, that was a bit of fun. That's right. That was when, and thank you for raising that. Try to be a little bit creative. Like I remember And I got shut down so many times when we didn't have copywriters and I would write an ad and my ads were horrible, but I thought they were the ants' pants because it was different, but it wasn't really real estate. And I'd put them out there and I'd get in trouble from my employer at the time, but I was trying to be a bit different. And I think when you're in a listing presentation, we've all got nice cars, we all present well, we don't have bad breath, we all smell nice, we've all got nice suits and ties. What's your point of difference? And it may be your personality and how you're engaging with that person. And it may be that you did something quirky and different. You make a sale, you put your sold by up. I mean, there's some people doing some really crazy things with that experience. More importantly, with that experience of a sale and a listing, the person that you're working with has only really done that probably once or twice in their lifetime. It's such a big moment. Make it special for them that they'll remember you later. Gifts are really important to me.
What do you do for settlement gifts?
Yeah, so depend on the client. We go through phases of just doing the photos and generic stuff.
Yeah.
If I know it's someone who has a specific passion or hobby, then and that comes back to more holidays than anything else. I might do a particular restaurant gift voucher, or I just recently sent a box of surf wax to a client who's a mad surfer for his birthday.
Cool.
It was sex wax, so he really liked it. He's just gotten divorced. But I mean, it's like toilet paper rolls. Actually, be different, stand out. Don't get in trouble. Don't break the law. Don't get done for harassment. But you've got to stand out from a very high standard of professionals. And generally, people that are out there today, they're not, excuse my French, they're not shit kickers anymore. They're professionals. They're switched on. What you can do with your phone today is incredible. I barely go into the office. I go to the office usually just to check on something or say hello to someone or pat people on the back or drop off some Portuguese tarts or something, and just make sure they recognize me, because I work off my phone, and I've got my support people that I can call through. And I think that's what you want to get to. You want to get to the stage where if you want to be the good lister, that's all you're doing. You're outside. And by being outside, you're then also able to have some balance in your life as well, rather than being stuck at the office all day. I get too distracted to be in an office, I must confess. Yeah,
I feel the same way.
What would you say then? It sounds like you do a lot of investing back in yourself, gifts, to build the brand and the image.
But that's my brand, yeah? That's not my Raine and Horne brand. So your company's doing certain things for you and your clients. You've got to do your own stuff. You've got to go, I've just sold this property 2 years ago. Why didn't I have their birthday details? Anniversary letter? Don't just send the cut and paste stuff. Send them a lottery ticket or knock on the door. You've got to go that little bit extra that they remember you. Yeah? It's like, oh, he sold it to us. A lot of the listings that I lose that I've sold to is just because I've just gotten fat and lazy and expected them to come back. But you guys are sharper and quicker and faster, and you're out there hunting, and I'm losing business to you guys because you're on it. So remember whatever experience you have in terms of a sale, make that an amazing experience. It's corny to say keep that client for life, but you kind of need to. I mean, in your CRM, you should be putting a 5-year, 10-year plan. It's all automated. And as part of that, you still have to have the human touch. Paul Langston in our office, I don't know how he does it. He's got thousands of people in his database. He calls everybody. He starts in November, starts calling everybody, wish you a good Yontif, a good Jewish holiday, or a Merry Christmas. Personal. He gets a lot of business from that.
Yeah.
What's been your best investment, would you say, yourself?
For me, I used to hate going for, when you used to apply for jobs, I don't know who has or who hasn't. I used to hate it when they go, send in your resume. Like, F that. Send in your resume. You're not going to really read. Well, number one, I dropped out at year 9, so that doesn't do very well for me anyway. But I need to get in front of people. I find that if I can get in front of people, I'm reasonably good at reading the play a little bit, whether I should just shut up or talk a little bit more and work out where my conversation is going to go. So I think I'm very big on gifts, and they don't need to be expensive gifts. A lottery ticket, for God's sake. But rather than, it's like, when you chase expireds and you send out all the letters, I notice your property's expired. Go door knocker. They've received 10 letters from everybody else. Stand out. So if I was starting out today and I'm doing a deal, and if I was working with someone, even on the letters, I'd be saying, congratulations on your exchange, on your sale. Tom, who I work for, and Rick Serrao. Start getting mileage. Start getting your profile out there. Keep the people that like you long term, because they're going to be the referring ones. It's all about, to me, real estate is so simple. It's listing and being referred. The rest is fluff.
Renat's asked you a question as well, bit of a fluffy question. But why don't you advertise your prices?
Very good. No, I have this thing in my head where I kind of go, there's two ways to think about it. Give everybody all the information and they can decide and they'll come to you, or maybe keep some of the information back. If we sell a property, generally we'll keep the information back, because I want to get an inquiry. If it's an email, it could be, Joe Blogs 007, so that's a real estate agent, right? Trying to find out the price at the end of the day. So we try and keep the information as long as possible, so that we can get people coming to us and qualifying why they're asking about the price. Is it because they're comparing to their property, and they want to sell a property, or are they generally a strong buyer? I still think that if we give everything away, they might just call, you know what? Here's a good question. Not a question, but a statement. Why is it that so many of these referral companies today are doing so well? Local agent finder, open agent, the list goes on and on and on. I subscribe to them all. Happy to pay my 20% on the record for business that I was never going to get. More than happy. They're doing well because I feel that the majority of consumers, we're all branded pretty much the same. And let's face it, we run good photos, good campaigns. We're all out there. We're all number ones. I think there's 20 number ones in this room, I'm sure. If we work out, highest priced record on the northeast side of the top floor of that building, we're all setting records at the end of the day. So this is why I keep going on about getting your profile online and improving your profile online, is because the consumer sometimes gets confused and they want an independent person who they don't know they're getting a referral fee from, to tell them who's the agent to list with. Now, those companies are scraping the data. They're going, who's one of the top 3 busiest agents in that area? So get your profile out there. Get it on your peers' signboards.
So do you not feel like you're losing profile by not displaying the prices? It's not showing as a premier ad?
No. My personal view is that there's so many, you got to pick in terms of, you mentioned a good point in terms of not displaying the price because you're not a premier ad on say realestate.com, for example. We sell a lot of bullshit and we get sold a lot of bullshit, no disrespect. So we're all told we've got to upgrade and we've got to go with the premium plus and the this and the that. And I have this discussion all the time and I go, but there's only 3 properties in Vaucluse for sale. I'm up there anyway. I think that who asks for reviews here? I'm sure there's a lot of people that would be asking for reviews. Now, where do you start? Do you go to Rate My Agent? Do you ask for Google? Do you ask for realestate.com? And do you really expect your client to give you 3 reviews? They might do. I mean, who does surveys? I usually delete a lot of them. Sometimes if the person was really nice, I'll get halfway through it. So reviews are crucial, but what platforms do you go on? Now, I was supporting Rate My Agent, which is, I think, a very good company. We've tapered that a little bit more because my view is I'm going now more Google and realestate.com because I think the consumers are going more that way and more agents are going Rate My Agent. So for example, I have a standard email that goes out when it's a good experience, and hopefully most of the time it is. And I confess, I don't send it out to everybody. And I pay for my reviews. I'll put out there that an email that'll say, thank you. We have a competition going in the company, which we always do. At the moment, if you could help support me, and your review is invaluable. And as a little thank you for each of these 3 reviews, I'm willing to pay $20. And if you do the 3, there's a $100 voucher Westfield's voucher going out to you. And people go, $100? You're Rick Serrao. You don't need to do that. And I go, you know what? I do. Because reviews are invaluable. I'd rather spend 20, 40, or 60 or $100 on a review, a positive review, than doing a letterbox drop. Because someone's going to be Googling that. We Google stuff when we're looking for hotels and restaurants and what have you. So I do pay for my reviews. Doesn't mean that I get them all in, but then, and you know what? People like getting something for nothing. 10 minutes? They pick up $100, that's money. It doesn't have to be $100. I'm not saying that's the market rate. I'm not setting a floor here. But I'm just trying to get you to think a little bit differently for the superannuation. If you're in a sales associate and trying to list properties to sell now, how are you going to get those referrals coming in later? So you need to spread your web. So no, I think keep as much information as possible. This is the other thing. I'm a little bit slow these days. I'll have an auction, and then I will celebrate that with my team, and I'll go home to my wife and my child. The next day I'll start prospecting. My challenge is at our auctions, I've got agents who are very sharp in my auction room. As soon as the result goes down, bing, out to their database. Yeah, how can I keep up with that? So you got to pick what, and that's where your EBU comes in and what have you. So. And there's another thing. If you're a sales associate and if you haven't got any listings, go pinch them from your other agents. Go, if something sells in a street somewhere, well, I know you've got the underbidder. You better tell them you've got the underbidder and try and list that property. Speed is really important right now. And once again, I've got off the topic. So I think keep thinking about your profile, not just within your office, but in cyberspace, so to speak.
Yep. Question from Miles. Do you have any weaknesses? And if so, what are they?
There's a few that I can't talk about in public, but in saying that, in all seriousness, my weakness is I get very, very easily distracted. Very easily distracted. As you can see, asking a question, I get a bit involved in the question, and then I get passionate and I get talking about something else which is completely irrelevant. Yeah. So I'm easily distracted. I find I need someone to check in on me as to, have you done this, have you done that? I am really bad with paperwork, and I just have a mental block to paperwork. So I've had to hire someone to help me with that side of it. I think I'm really good with time management. I think I'm really bad with relationships from a personal point of view. My first, second and third wife will contest to that. But, there's a saying in my family, Lucy, my wife who works with me, keeps saying, can you just treat me like a client? Don't treat me like your wife. You give your clients so much. So I think that is a bit of a weakness, because your servicing, I find I do service my clients a lot more. I'm not saying do that or don't do that, but that's just me at the end of the day. So very disorganized, get disrupted very, very quickly, and I'm a bit reactive rather than proactive. So my job often is just to put out fires. But one thing I am good at is making decisions. And they're not always the right decision, but I'll make a decision and I'll move on, because otherwise your day just gets clogged.
At running at such a high pace, how do you kind of keep it all together? Like when you're running, when you're at the peak, not so much now when you're working part-time as such, but let's say when you're doing those 7 days, how do you kind of put it all together?
I think you do your best, and there's always going to be fallout, whether it's in your personal life or friendships or what have you. I think you've got to make sacrifices too at the end of the day. And if you have an idea of where you want to get to in the next year or two, whether that's financial, spiritually, health-wise, unfortunately, I've been driven by the financial has always been my number one priority, and it's taken me a long, long time to that not just be my number one priority, making family and good people around you to be as important. This isn't a hooray moment, don't get me wrong, but I think that it is important to connect with people around you that have your back, or you think they've got your back.
Yeah.
So I've kept it really, really simple. Every day, whether it's a vendor, a buyer, I've done something right, I've done something wrong, that people are at you every day. You've got to find a mechanism. For a long time early on in my career, it was alcohol, in all fairness. And as I explained, you've got to reward yourself. I'm one of those people that you had to reward yourself if you did something good. And to me, was making a sale or a listing. And as I said, for those years, we were making a shitload of sales. So that meant a lot of alcohol, which meant a lot of coffee the next day. And it wasn't a good formula. So I learned so I don't drink now, I don't do coffee, and I'm just too scared of being out of control. I don't do substances. And if you do and it makes you happy, good luck to you. What do I care? Do what you do you.
Yeah.
But be prepared for the fallout of doing you as well, because the next day you got to be on point guard, so to speak.
Yep.
Can I ask a personal question on that? Knowing what you know now, was the pursuit of financial success worth the sacrifices you did outside that? If you were someone like my age, would you go back and change things, or would you maintain the same mentality?
See, the benefit of hindsight, right? So ask me if it was a good idea at 53 to start a family. And if you'd asked me that at 45, I'd go, no way, I'm going to be I was supposed to be retired at 40. And then I was supposed to be retired at 45 and then 50. And now it's like I'm not going to retire type thing. My attitude to life is, why do I want to retire from something that I enjoy? I see so many people that have done well in business. They get to this retirement age, they're quite frail and they go into depression because they don't have hobbies. I think what is important in my life at the moment is having a purpose outside of work to keep going. I've got a young son at the moment, so he, in my head psychologically, I'm going, I need to stay fit, I need to stay healthy, I need to stay mobile, because when in 10 years' time I'm 66, he's 13, I don't want to be a cripple if I can avoid it. So in the benefit of hindsight, sure, it's easy to say work out a balance, but who the hell knows what a balance is, We're adrenaline junkies, We've got egos, we like toys, we like to make money, and most of us are better at spending more than what we make. One of the few benefits of hindsight that I have is I wish I had followed some words of wisdom from a certain people that said, when you're making this money, put it away. And I thought putting it away was putting a couple of grand in the account. But the smart money today, see, where are you going to go from real estate? What's your exit strategy? Is it to own your own business and run a rent roll? I mean, most people, that's what they want to do, is they go, well, I want to run a business and I'm going to have a rent roll and all my staff are going to work for me and they're going to make me money. That is not the facts. You will make more money being a salesperson, running a small team and having a better balance of life. I can assure you, but it also depends on you. See, to me, I go, either you go down that model, and if that's your model, that's great. But why don't you start buying property, buying the worst, shittiest place that you can possibly afford, because in 10 years' time, that's going to be worth a lot more money. It always is. Market's coming down now, but guess what? It's going to come up again. Buying assets, to me, I wish I started earlier, because it's a game. It's actually a con, Try and borrow money today. They look at the income that you've got. But if you've got an asset behind you, they look at you differently. They being the banks who we all love, in particular Westpac and the ANZ and Macquarie. But what happens when you've got an asset and you can get it revalued at a higher amount and pick up all this paper money to buy another asset or leverage off? This is the game that we should be in, and you guys are seeing opportunities. So to me, being a real estate agent isn't just about listing and selling. It's about how am I going to create assets and what assets I'm going to buy, because I'm there. I'm on the ground. And you may not be in a position to do that, but if I was a younger person now, I'd be going, I want to save up as much money as I can to buy my first asset.
Yep.
When I started, it was a bit different. We were a lot more creative with legislation. There's deals you can do with vendors and silly prices on contracts and all sorts of things you could do. You can't do that now, but save money, buy the product that you are selling.
Yeah. Rick, last question before we wrap it up. Number one advice for all of us agents here moving forward into a uncertain time in the market, but moving into the end of the year as well. What would be your number one advice?
Yeah, I don't know about your marketplace, but I think that we've got 6-7 weeks before Christmas. So effectively, second week of December, it's La La Land, everyone's switched off. So I kind of go the next 2 to 3 weeks, next 2 weeks, 3 weeks is list as much as you can, get it on. And if it's not going to sell, then making sure your agencies are long enough to cover you for next year. So anything you're signing up now, I would try and get a 6-month settlement, a 6-month agency agreement rather than 90-day agency agreement. I would also be starting to look at days on markets of your competitors because they're going to be switching. Some of them are going to switch off early. They're not going to be as efficient as you. They're not going to be watching and trying to relist their properties. It's December 1 comes along. It's party mode. They're in La La Land. So I think focus now on what are you going to list for next year. Start developing those relationships for what's coming on in the new year. I actually think it's going to be a very good year for real estate agents. You cannot get emotional about the market. We're getting emotional about the market because prices have come down. When did we become the protector of price? But because we're proud of what we do, we take that, and we kind of go, oh, my poor vendor, I love them so much. And, they're getting $300,000 less. That's cheap. How do you know it's going to be $300,000 less next year? We don't know. No one knows at the end of the day. Everyone's predicting bad things to happen. Good things might actually happen. Look at the pandemic. What the hell? What happened there? I mean, prices went up by 30 to 80%. Who's going to predict that? All I'm saying is hang in there. Stop protecting price is probably the big thing, And I find I do this a lot as well because 3 properties sold in the area 6 months ago for this much and this is selling for $300,000 less. Have I done a bad job? No, I've done a bloody good job. I've got a buyer in a tight market which has allowed my vendor to move on at the end of the day. Don't focus on price. Now focus on relationships for listings in the new year. And if you've got listings in the next few weeks, somehow get them extended so that you don't lose them over this next period. Look, we can keep talking and feel free to give me a call at any time. I'm really good on texts, but as you can see, I forget questions and I have verbal diarrhea. So put a bit of time aside. But seriously, we are so lucky. You guys are so lucky because you've got a really good framework. You've got good people around you by what I've seen in a very short period of time. It doesn't take much to get online and look at some reviews and actually pick up the culture of a company. I think my team can learn a lot of things from you guys. And there's something that you might want to start doing is picking out some agents in different areas and start talking about what you're doing and they're doing. If you're not in your core area, no one's going to be threatened, and that's just going to develop a relationship of referrals as well. Christmas cards, get those out for clients that you've been working with, especially if you've sold them a property. Just try and be high touch in a different way. Don't just be the cut and paste person.
So I've got one last question. Yeah. Where's the dream look like from here being at the top?
I'm not at the top. Okay. You know what? The other thing we haven't spoken about, every time there's a competition out there for Telstra, REB, put your figures in. You know why a lot of us are getting awards? Because no one else is putting their figures in. I'm not number one in bloody Australia. I'm in number one for the people that put their paperwork in. There are people in my core area that are making double, triple the amount of money that I am at the end of the day. But they couldn't be bothered, or they don't. No, it's not they couldn't be bothered. Maybe they don't want to. Maybe their culture is, I'm just go under the radar, and that's fine. So yes, I do reasonably well, and I've done reasonably well because I think I've had a lot of luck, but I do I want to be the person that goes down the street and I don't have clients crossing over the street that they don't want to talk to me. I want to walk down the street. Unfortunately or fortunately, where I live is where I do my business. So I've got to be very, very careful not to burn the person in the next street or 3 streets away, because everybody talks at the end of the day. I've got properties at the moment where I've got certain agents that are about to list them at certain prices, and I've just gone, tell it the way it is. Because although we may miss out on the deal right now, superannuation will kick in later and we'll get that business later. And in 3 occasions, we lost 1 listing and the other 2 thought, we get it. We thought you guys were pitching high on price anyway. But just be transparent with your clients. We're there to pitch business. Remember how you're going to be the different one that's going to stand out in a legal way and not in a crazy, crazy way. But don't be cut and paste.
Beautiful. Thank you, Rick.
No worries.
Thank you.
Welcome. Nice meeting you.